Welcome to From the VC's Bookshelf, a podcast from TBR, the College System of Tennessee, the state's largest higher education system. In this series, we examine how we might re-envision the work we do and how we work together as we move into a post-pandemic world. Please join our host, Dr. Heidi Lemming, Vice Chancellor for Student Success, as she leads a live discussion with industry experts and leaders throughout our system.
In our Spring 2025 podcast series, we are focusing on themes found in the book, Creating Campus Community, in Search of Ernest Boyer's Legacy by William McDonald and Associates. The book was released in 2002, but the relevance of the topic is more important than ever for our students and institutions. Belonging asks, does everyone on campus feel valued, connected, and able to be their authentic self? In many ways, belonging is the emotional counterpart to inclusion. It's the feeling of having personal involvement in an environment. A sense of belonging is centered on gaining acceptance, being part of something, and feeling supported, as well as giving support to others. And like inclusion, a sense of belonging is active and requires reflection. Thriving institutions create spaces to foster social connections and communication that in turn nurture creativity, innovation, and success. And so in today's podcast, I'm excited to be talking to two faculty members who have been really engaged in our work around high-impact practices. They are high-impact practice ambassadors, and this is all centered on our efforts to create a sense of community with our students on campuses through our teaching practices. My first guest is Sharon Grigsby, who is an assistant professor of social sciences at Columbia State Community College, where she has taught for 5 years. In addition, she is a TBR High-Impact Practice Ambassador for Honors Education, and in her high-impact practice courses, she most enjoys helping students see themselves more clearly and how they engage with society, culture, and the environment around them. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much.
My other guest is Jessica Mills. She is an instructor of education in the education department at Walters State Community College, and she serves as a high-impact practice ambassador for service learning. Jessica has a passion for fostering a sense of belonging within the classroom and the college, and designs and maintains the first-year experience course at her institution. Outside of her work at the college, Jessica works at her church, is active in her community of Morristown, and educates and raises awareness throughout Tennessee for electric shock drowning. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Super excited to have this conversation, but I know some of my listeners, while I would love to say that they've listened to every one of my podcasts, might have not tuned in to an episode prior to this point to really know what this book is about and what we're hoping to engage in conversation around today. So I did want to do kind of a brief recap of the themes found in the book. It is based on a theory of engagement by Ernest Boyer. So this book, in Creating Campus Community, there are authors from 5 diverse institutions. They share their successes, failures, ongoing challenges in kind of establishing this connectiveness piece. So the author, or Boyer, the theory that he has includes 6 key components. 1, being educational purposeful. So we're going to talk a little bit about that related to high-impact practices, because that's certainly where we are trying to be very intentional in our work. An open space where civility is affirmed, a just place where everyone is honored, disciplined, where group obligations guide behavior. And so we talk a little bit like, behavior in the classroom, but behavior outside the classroom on our campuses, a caring place and a celebrative place where traditions are shared. So, when we think holistically about how all those play into creating this culture on our campuses, a sense of belonging, it is intangible in the sense that, it's what we feel. But essentially, at the heart of this is when people feel like they are meant to be there, they're with people that value them, then, that's what really is kind of the secret recipe, so to speak, of students feeling like they can be engaged and comfortable at our institutions. So that is really kind of what the book's about, but also what we hope high-impact practices are doing, right? So let's dive into reflecting on this concept of a sense of belonging. And particularly from your lens as a faculty member. So I gave that short overview of your bio, but would like to take a little bit more time here for you to kind of talk about like how you see your work affecting a student's sense of belonging on campus. Jessica, I'll go with you.
Okay, I'll start. Well, one thing that, I'm really passionate about, of course, is HIPS, but also first-year seminar. I think that is a great way to capture students, to get them connected to the college, to get them connected to each other, to get them connected to faculty and the resources that are available for them. And that's one of the things I think my students walk away from is I didn't know there was so much there for us. And we do team building, and we, get them connected to where they can go for help and make them really feel like this is a place of belonging. This is your place, and we're going to help you find your place, whatever that is. And first-year seminar gives us that opportunity to be able to do that because we have that time in that class to be able to explore things on campus. And so that's one thing I really try to do is get them connected, whatever it is. We get connected to the college, we get connected to each other. And we also look at other ways to get connected within the community because if they feel that sense of belonging, of course, on campus, but also within themselves, that cultivates so much confidence in them to be able to move forward in their academic, in their professional, and in their personal growth.
Yeah. And I'll come back to you, but as we listen to Sharon share a little bit about how her work connects with this, I would love to hear any personal stories that you might have of things you've seen, how students have come in maybe a first year, first week, and how you've seen that transition happen. Because I think that's really powerful to kind of hear a student story on that. So I'll give you a moment to kind of think about that. But Sharon, what about you?
I'm fortunate because I teach psychology and sociology, right? And I think that might be easier than walking into a stats class for sure, right? Or a history class. And I love history, don't get me wrong. But so immediately my classes are more laid back. So that has to be the environment they walk into, right? They walk into and it's chill and it's laid back and it's not yakety yak for an hour and 20 minutes and 20 million. It's none of that. It's none of that. Psychology and sociology is real life. It's open up your social media. It's watch the news. It's talk about your boss or your siblings or your spouse or whomever the case may be, right? So immediately when they walk in, they need to understand the relevance of how this class is going to relate to their own personal life. And then immediately they're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I can relate to that. So that puts them at ease, right? And you have to and I am hugely proactive in making my classes a safe place. So for the first 10 minutes of every single class, talk about what you want to. We'll shut the door. You can gripe about whomever, whatever. Let's talk about it. It doesn't leave the room. I ask about how their classes are going. I ask about, hey, what movie did you see or what music do I need to be listening to? Nothing real, personal, just little stuff, right? And immediately they're like, oh, you really care. Well, yes, I care because if you aren't doing well, you're not going to do well in my class, right? A sense of belonging is interesting because I think this generation, Gen Z, post-COVID in particular, will tell you, oh, I don't need to be around people. I'm cool. I'm good by myself. I want to be by myself. And I'm like, that's absolute crap, okay? Because we know that the whole Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, smack dab in the middle is that sense of belonging. And I don't care who you are. We as a human being want to belong and feel a purpose. My question is, do they understand that yet? Maybe not. Right? So they don't know because they've never experienced it. There's a thought, right? So it's our purpose as faculty and as an institution and as a society to make these people feel as if the minute they walk into that classroom and from that time forward, that they're going to feel like they have a purpose and a belonging and that class is relevant.
Right.
That's hard to do with some classes. I'm grateful that in my class it's not.
It's an easier lift for you, maybe.
Much easier. Yeah, much easier.
Yeah, but that is the intent behind a first-year seminar course like Jessica was talking about. So just curious, how have you seen that play out? Like, what are we doing in those first-year seminar courses that really make that transition happen?
Those campus connections, bringing people, staff on and into the classroom. They see the names. Again, like we talked about, the Berger's office. What is that? Financial aid. What does all that mean? And how does it relate to me? They're so overwhelmed and they lack self-confidence. Some of them do. And it's so, we can get those relationships building where they feel like they are a part. And we are actually normal people. We have our own struggles. I'm a product of Walter State Community College, and there's not a college I love more because of how Walter State bridged me from high school to the university. I couldn't have done it. And so I see myself in those students. And I think that's what's so important, is to share my own struggles. Now I have all these letters behind my name, which is really cool. But I also worked really hard for those. And so I'm very transparent about sharing my struggles with that, and where Walter State really filled in that gap for me. But I see students come in, and also another HIP is the peer mentoring, for them to be able to kind of latch on, per se, to another student who's been there. And that's really such a neat back and forth, because you're seeing a student who was also that student walking into first year seminar. And so you see them start developing relationships, but you also see the peer mentor then coming out and being their own leader as well, too. That's something that's been really key that I have saw for both the mentor and the mentoree. We have Senator Central, and we have navigators at Walter State. And so those are students who, lead tours, and those too, bringing those to the classroom and let the students see, their journey and how they've come, and then cultivating them to get to that point with those, to do that one day. And so that's such a neat relationship to see, because you'll see these students come in that first day. They have this preconceived notion of community college or college in general, and they're like, I don't know what to think. I have this picture in my mind, and then you start breaking that down where it's more real. We're real. We've got resources for you, and that's where you start seeing that attachment for them, and you start seeing them walk those halls with more confidence, and you start seeing them come in and talk to each other. One thing I love to do in my classroom is, I am a very beachy person. And so we play like jazz music or beach music. And so that the first few minutes, that's what they walk into, is like a live beach scene. And, my students at 11 o'clock love to see the sunrise come up in Hawaii, because that's about the time. And so things like that just make them feel relaxed. And this is a safe place, like you said earlier. And you start seeing them develop relationships with each other. And then I think the neatest thing is to see students who came in, didn't know each other, didn't know anybody. And then you see them walking around on campus a few weeks later. So it's just wonderful. It's amazing what can happen.
Do you have a lot of good response with students that volunteer to be mentors or peers?
Yeah, when we promote it, they're not really sure what it is. Sure. And, we're still kind of trying to figure out what to do with it and how to build it. But yeah, we do, because, there is a little bit of a money incentive as well, too. And when we also talk about how you can put this on your resume. So yeah, it is. And what's neat is you see the students who are the mentees, they start wanting to be the mentors because of what they've saw throughout the semester. And of course, the money is a good incentive too, but we also talk about the resume building.
Oh, yeah.
And, they start becoming friends with the other staff and faculty. And it just creates such a confidence within these students for them to go on to their next personal steps in life or their next professional steps in life. I just can't say enough about.
No, that's great.
Those HIPs, the first year seminar and peer mentoring, but HIPs in general, there's so much intentionality that comes with HIPs when we put our focus on it.
Yeah. And Sharon, you mentioned, your classroom kind of lends itself to these conversations. So in your experience of the last 5 or more years, when you are engaging with students in this, do you feel like they do have an authentic desire to be connected? Because you talked a little bit about generational differences there, but I think there's a sense from some folks that they just want to be told what to do. They don't want to make decisions and that sort of thing.
I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Okay. Gen Z was a tough thing for me to wrap my head around, right? I've been teaching 30 plus years, and Gen Z threw me for a loop. So when I came in, it was, you're a snowflake and everybody gets a trophy and all that, right? But that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. None of this is their fault. They were born into a society of technology. From day one, they've had something smart in their hand or an access to it. And that device has led itself to snippets of information and parents who didn't read and libraries that weren't visited. So all of their information came in very short bursts.
Sure.
So, and this, went all the way through K through 12, and we won't talk about that, but there were the failings in K through 12. And then they get to college, and it's a whole different ballgame, right, man? I mean, it's like, I got to read how many chapters this week? I've got to read, and I have to do chapters. So with that being said, one might say they're lazy and unintentional and want to be led around by the hand.
Right.
They don't know any other way. Do they want to have a sense of belonging? Do they want power over their own self and their own future? Absolutely. Do they know that yet? Probably not. Do they know how? Definitely not. So that's that dance that we do in the classroom of, I've got to be a teacher, right? I have to be somewhat academic, but I don't need to be a 100-year-old archaic yappity yap for 3 hours and here's your test and go home and I hope you learned something, right? That's not what it's about anymore. So we walk that tightrope as faculty between helping and holding out our hand, but not leading so much as helping. You know what I'm saying? It's a fine line, you know?
Trying to teach them a sense of how to advocate for themselves in many ways, right?
They don't know how to, because their parents come with them to college on the first day, you know, to sign up for classes.
Right.
So we still have that. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right?
Right.
It's just different. So because it's different, they present differently. I think they want to belong. I think they want a sense of power. I don't think they know how to get it just yet.
Well, and it's different too when we're talking about community technical colleges in our system. We don't have residence halls. They aren't living on campus where you're literally, the parents are leaving them, right? Because they're going to be living there, but a lot of they're going home at the end of the day. And we have adults, right? We have a lot of folks coming back to us after they've already tried several careers. And so that adult piece, even, I mean, it's not just about coming in classwork done. They also thrive with a sense of connectedness in some way. It might be maybe not in the traditional ways that we think about with an 18-year-old, right? Because they have families and other things, but...
But they already have connections. Keep that in mind. Those non-traditional students who come back in with kids or spouses or jobs or careers that they hate or whatever the case may be, they've already lived life a little bit, right? So they know how to do schedules. They know how to do planning. They know how to sacrifice, right? They know that they're not going to have their head in social media 24/7. They already know this. Those skills are already there. Their sense of belonging isn't necessarily in the classroom. Their sense of purpose is. Their sense of belonging is back home waiting on them when they get to the house.
Right.
Two totally different things.
I totally agree with that with the adults, but I think there is also that they want to feel that sense of belonging as well too. And so I think it's also can be neat when you see that adult student and that
18-year-old or whatever connecting.
Yes, connecting. And they're leaning on each other. And again, that's where like we as faculty can't do everything because there are so many students and we can't resonate with every student. But when you start creating those relationships within, they're also building that and, you know, and pushing it out around campus. And that's such a beautiful thing to see is relationship building because
But we have to do that. We as faculty have to create those opportunities. And that's not standing in front of your class as sage on the stage yapping for an hour and 20 minutes or 3 hours. That's not it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, our dynamic has to change.
Right. We have to be approachable.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that and the faculty's role in this space and thinking about leadership on campus, in Chapter 5, the author describes an example of how leadership can develop this kind of quote-unquote Boyer-inspired collaboration on campus. So, I mean, students do spend more time out of classroom in their daily lives, you know, things on campus. And, of course, again, we don't have residence halls necessarily. It might be harder to keep them on campus, but we talk about connections with community, with a family, that sort of thing. Do you see examples of how your institutions or how leadership has done a good job of maybe having those connections outside the classroom for students in terms of what they're developing from an administration standpoint?
Okay, I do. Yes. I mean, I think Walter State excels at it. I mean, we do. We see the issue of we're not a residence hall. We're, you know, and so we really do try to create those relationships by having events. And, you know, food is always a good way to get students in.
Sure.
And so, you know, we do those Senator Central startups, but, you know, we also do events, you know, let's talk about registration, you know, things like that. The library has some amazing things to try to connect students as well as like hot chocolate days and, you know, exam days. And that's where you get those. I keep talking about food because I love food too, but.
Well, you have sports, you have other things too.
Yes. And the sports as well too. And that's where, you know, and, you know, even given credit, a bonus point or two for going to an athletic game. And,
absolutely.
you know, and so things like that, I think we really do try to get those students in where our college looks fun and it is fun and, you know, hangout places, you know, a game room and places where they can feel like they can go and just kind of sit back. Our library has those pods, you know, that are very nice and students actually really love those. And in fact, when I do my dual enrollment tours, the students just go crazy. Like, wow, this is a library where you can actually like hang out. And so that's exactly what we're trying to target. And I think we do an excellent job at that.
No, I think the community, community college is a different animal. Okay, it's a different animal, which is another thing coming from a faculty or administrative, maybe not administrative, but from faculty point of view, you have to understand that community college is not a university. Okay, the mindset is not the same. The students aren't necessarily the same. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to change the mindset. But the problem with community college is most of these students, they don't live there. They got to go home, and most of them work. Right? When we look at socioeconomic status, community college versus university, it's a lower. It's not bad. It's just the way it is. Geographically speaking, it tends to be a lower socioeconomic status. These students have to work.
Right.
And they are living at home. And they maybe have other responsibilities as opposed to mom and dad who just dropped off Johnny Boy to MTSU at the dorm, right? Whole different mindset. With that being said, I think we, community college-wise, TBR system, does an excellent job of providing services. We have all of these thing. I can't even keep up. There's so many, right? The registration drives and the clubs and the this and the tents and it's everywhere. But they don't show up much.
They have to engage.
They have to engage.
Yeah.
It's like pulling teeth. I mean, it's clubs, it's just minimal. And I give lectures and I don't know what the answer to that is. And post-COVID, it's been really bad trying to get students engaged. After that, we offer great services. I think we're doing a great job from a college perspective of offering these things to try and engage. Pardon me, but I don't know what the answer is to get them to engage more.
Well, and maybe, again, for our listeners, if any of them are students or prospective students thinking about, there is an important role that engaging with the institution plays in your success. It's not just because we want you to come to an event to have fun, but it is that connectiveness piece. There are lots of statistical research that shows when you're more engaged with your faculty or your other students outside the classroom, you're more successful and more likely to persist. So it is fueling the success you have in the classroom in many ways. And, part of this community conversation, Jessica, you're involved with service learning, and that is sometimes going out into the community, engaging with the community through that work, which is, part of a classroom experience, but can still also connect the institution and the students to community. Maybe you want to speak a little bit more about even that.
Yeah, service learning has multiple benefits as well, too. I mean, not only are you getting your students out there and you're getting them around positive role models who are contributing to their community in whatever way. And of course, you've vetted everything, but they're seeing the benefits of what they can do. And that's where that growth mindset can really be cultivated in service learning, because you're giving them the skills and you're giving them the ability. You're setting the framework up for them because they don't know where to go do this stuff. And so you're giving them that, and you're putting in that with, of course, good role models who are going to guide and lead them. And then you're asking them, of course, to reflect on that and to really think about what impact they have. We don't want to confuse service learning with just, go do some volunteer hours here, a couple
internship somewhere,
which is great. Yeah. Volunteer hours are great, but you want them to be meaningful. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've talked about with HIPS is it's meaningful and it's intentional.
Right.
And that's where that key comes in, because service learning, like for example, with our teacher education program, we do service learning. And the students, they're not quite sure. They don't have that confidence of going into the classroom or not yet. How they're gonna work with students. What is this all about? And then you start seeing them slowly building up that confidence as they get more classes that have those service learning hours. Or you may see, this is not for me. And that's good too, because they get that. And so service learning too, again, and you're getting, of course, the college name out there too. These are Walter State students, and we try to make that a big deal. You are representing Walter State. This is a big deal that we are allowing you and letting you, and you're getting credit. So you think about who you are representing. Think about what you are saying to the community. And so therefore, it's like a relationship where these people are like, oh, these are Walter State students. We want these students, know. So we really try to make that a big deal, that this is a big opportunity for you. Seize it.
Well, we were, one of our colleagues today, we were talking about Gen Zs. That's what we do. We don't trash them. We just talk about them.
Right. Sure. You got to try to understand
them.
them.
We love them.
We do. We love them. Don't get me wrong. But we have to talk about it. Okay. We do. And they can't see the carrot. Our generation, we saw the carrot at the end of the stick. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. And some people are like, what? What's a carrot at the end of the stick? I saw that. I knew what it was. And I knew how to get to it. Maybe I didn't know how to get to it, but I knew that it was there. I'm not sure that some of our students see that carrot. So service learning is like, oh, there's the carrot. There it is, right? And if we could bring that service learning ideology into something like, I don't know, a psych major, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have service learning in psych. I mean, you could go volunteer somewhere if you would like, but it's not designated service learning. You know what I'm saying? Not like rad tech, MLT, nursing, vet tech, any of those, right? That might be interesting, right? To have some sort of, ooh, this is your carrot, because I'm not sure they see what that future looks like.
You know, one thing we do on the first day of class with, especially first-year seminars, is that, you know, we get out our phones. They all have a phone. And I text them, have them text themselves. You know, on the iPhone, you can, like, pin yourself. And so what is your long-term goal? You know, a lot of them it is they want to graduate, transfer, get their certificate. And so every week we revisit that. Get out your phones. What did you do this week? And that helps them see, okay, this week I did my homework. This week I went to class. And so I tell them, you're getting a step every week, even though it feels like, wow, I went to class every day this week, but I'm so tired. You know, but you're reaching that long-term goal. And so that's what it is. If you can, because they are sometimes a short-sighted.
Very.
And that's okay, because I can be too. But, you know, you help them see what did I do today? What did I do this week to reach that long-term goal? And, you know, they have came back with me and said that they have continued to do that to help them see what the long-term goal is. Because we lose motivation. They lose motivation. I do too. So you need to be reminded, why are you getting up every day and doing what you're doing?
Right.
Our class motto is, you are your biggest advocate.
Right.
Nobody will fight for you like you're fight for yourself. And, of course, I have to tell them, you know, I don't mean fighting in the parking lot. But you have to be the one that asks those questions, and you start building up that confidence, and you start letting them see that they can ask questions, and they're asking good questions, and you help them word their questions as well too. And so they start doing a really good job of that as they move forward.
Yeah.
And we as faculty in an institution have to maintain that consistency, because I know we call it college success at Columbia State. First year experience, it's the same thing. Whatever, it's the same thing. And, you know, anyway, you have everybody has to take it. Everybody has to take this class, right? And I think it's a great class, but it all depends on how it's taught.
Yeah.
So if you don't get the one that's great, you're just like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? If you get the great ones like you, then it's like, ooh, okay, this is not how I need to do things, because they don't know how to do things, right? But then after this college success first year experience,
We call it the college experience. Yes.
is done, then that information is dropped. It's never talked about again. And I think that needs to be fueled throughout every class, every curriculum. Now, some people say, well, you're holding their hand. Yeah, maybe. Maybe I'm just guiding you in a direction. I'm not enabling you. But this is the difference between this generation and us. We didn't have so much hand-holding for all kinds of different reasons, and this generation needs a little more direction, a little more assistance, a gentler approach.
Well, and you always see you go one direction, and then there's cost benefit on the other, you know, I mean, so our generation, the others plenty of negatives, even how we were too, right? So it's never perfect. You're always overcompensating. And now they're talking about the latest generation, very purpose driven. They want to find meaning in their lives. And so they're seeking out careers, and a lot of times want to be their own boss because of that. And so, you know, we're always kind of shifting based on the different dynamics there.
That's okay. And that's what's so neat about it is education. Is I love being in the field of education. Is it's evolving and it's always changing, and that's our task is to keep up with it. No matter who is sitting in our classroom, whether it's the adult, we can all as a group learn from each other and learn from our experiences, and that's where again I think the beauty of education comes in.
Absolutely,
we can learn from them and they can learn from us. And
that's a two-way street, man.
Yeah,
every time I walk in a classroom, if I don't walk out knowing something different, and it could be something really silly. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it could be some meme on TikTok that I didn't know about.
Right.
But, you know, whatever. There's not a time, usually 98% of the time, I walk out of the classroom and I have learned something. That's what it's all about, is that two-way connection. Right?
And again, back to HIPS, where reflection is such a key piece. And it's good for us to be reflecting as faculty and as people, as individuals, as a society as well, too. And so we teach that to our students to be reflecting. I tell my students that two of the best gifts you can give yourself is self-awareness and self-reflection. It will be the best gift to you. It'll be the best gift to other people as well, too, in your life.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's the beauty of high-impact practices, too, is they're kind of timeless in the sense that the individual applies that high-impact practice and the learning to their lives and can make meaning that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
Because they don't really understand the thought process of reflection. You know, they just sit and they think for a second. But if you teach them and you guide them, then they're not only reflecting on service learning, they're reflecting on their life and how they were that day and how they were in their job. And that is so integral to our society and our community.
Yeah, defining purpose for themselves.
Yes.
Well, the whole GPS thing that we learned today, which was so cool, and I'll have to say that I wish I'd have come up with that. But nonetheless, the whole growth and purpose and sense of belonging, that's life. That's not just in the classroom. That's life. So those skills that we teach, those skills that we instill in the classroom will carry on with them for the rest of their life. I mean, that's huge.
And they're going to pass that on to another generation as well, too. It's such a win-win.
Yep.
And so for our listeners, our ambassadors go through an orientation program. And one of the things that we do is we bring in some experts to give them some techniques to use around teaching students a sense of growth mindset, a sense of purpose in what they're learning in the classroom, and that sense of belonging. And so Sharon was referring to the training earlier today. They just completed their orientation for the 2025 year. So
if you don't know GPS, know it.
Look it up. It's great. And it's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Metaphorically, I guess it kind of is. Gives you direction, right?
I like it.
It's the point. Okay. So, a final kind of thought as we think about our role in building community partnerships in the sense of developing maybe civic responsibility in students. Again, like we've mentioned in various ways how we're preparing them for life, how to be contributors to our communities. So it's not just about our campuses. The role of you as an educator is really to teach them on developing that sense of well-being and how they engage with the world. How do you see that playing out in your work? Maybe examples of how you've seen that play out in your work. Stump you for a second.
I know how to think for a second. I definitely the service learning, like I've talked about, sending our teacher education students out into the classroom and they're actually seeing what their job could entail, but also they're developing that personal growth as well, too. They're seeing how they can give back. They don't understand maybe what all is out there and feel like they're a part of it, but they can be a part of it. And then that just kind of grows to other things they can do as well, too, and can create those networking. Connections is so incredibly important.
I was sitting here just thinking of two things right off the top of my head. Social work class, bringing in expert speakers that are in the field. That's as close to service learning as I can get. I'm sorry. But that's great because they're like, because there's young, old, geriatric, mentally ill, incarcerated. The volume of people that one can serve in social work is huge, right?
Sure.
So this covers all the bases. So to watch them interact and ask questions, that's pretty cool, right? But my mind was blown the very first time that I did study abroad in 23. When I went to Italy with these students, we did social psych, which of course is, hello, look around. It's society, right? But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that I was traveling with English and sociology and two art folks, right? And so my guys were hanging out with the art folks learning art, and the art folks were hanging out with us having these deep discussions, right? And I'm telling you, it was the most mind-blowing. I have never in my life. I came back dancing and singing praises because not only personally was it great for me, of course, it's Italy, hello, but professionally, these different disciplines and these different types of students, traditional and not, came together and integrated that learning into meaningful, purposeful, take it back home and use it type of stuff.
And they're also seeing how it all, sometimes you get students and they're like, why am I taking this class? Why am I taking this class?
Exactly.
And that's something we're really working on right
Absolutely.
Is to see how they are all, it's a holistic look. And that's what you've got to get across to the students because they quite don't understand, why do I have to take this class when I'm this major, And so when they can see that it all works together and that, and then the faculty, of course, are on board together working as one where our classes are connecting and we are seeing that overlap. It could be such, again, a beautiful thing for the faculty member and for the student and for the institution and for the world.
Yeah, totally. Sharon, I love that example because you're really talking about the heart of why we make students take some gen ed courses that maybe they're like, why am I taking? It's because everything is interconnected in the world, right? And we are in a global society, and you need to have these experiences and these conversations with students and faculty in those other disciplines.
I mean, granted, there might be, you might not ever use stats, okay? I'll just say, if you're a history man.
A stat professor's going, oh, that's how
I can't imagine my math friends.
I'm just saying, there might be a class or two, and I'll tell people, if they're in an anatomy class, look, do you really need to know, cell division? That probably you'll never use it again in your life. Just get through it and go on. But we do. We have those difficult conversations. Why am I sitting in a history class? Do you understand that everything is related to history? Every single thing that we talk about currently? No. Well, then you should. So, yes, they need to see that. But they can't necessarily because they can't see the carrot because they weren't taught to. So that's our
Again, so it's more than just the true academic curriculum that you're teaching students. You're teaching them how to navigate.
Oh, it's life. You've got to make it relative.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a good conversation. Thank you. I've really enjoyed hearing some of these reflections that you all have had about the importance of high-impact practices. I love having high-impact practice advocates on my side. So as we wrap up our conversation today, I do want to share a quote from the author Parker Palmer. It's not the author of this book, a different well-known author. Gives us a good closure to the conversation. Palmer states, "We have at our disposal one of the greatest vehicles for community building known to humankind, the one called education." And that is really at the heart of what we've been talking about today, how this is all interrelated. And while elusive at times, a sense of belonging is a serious responsibility and aspiration that all higher education professionals should aspire to achieve. And so I think I've got some really great examples in front of me today for this conversation about how you're doing that on campus. You are not the only faculty, though. You're representative of many faculty across all of our institutions. And so I thank you for the work that you're doing in this space because education is so important, and hope our listeners will not only take away from this conversation the important work that you're doing, but know that if you haven't considered going back to college or being part of the college environment, it is for you. And
never too late. Never too late.
Sense of belonging for you. Yeah.
Well, thank y'all for your support, too.
Yes,
and we appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of From the VC's Bookshelf, brought to you by TBR, the College System of Tennessee, powering the state's economy and changing the lives of thousands of graduates, starting successful careers each year. To learn more about upcoming book selections or to register to attend discussions live, visit tbr.edu/bookshelf.